Alrighty, hello everybody. Welcome back to another edition of the Skating Penguin Network Mailbag. I am Garrett Bahana. Alongside me, this edition of the Mailbag, it's the one-worded, the one and only Snail. As Robbie is down with the sickness. For all of you Disturbed fans out there, I don't know if people still listen to Disturbed in 2023, but he. Oh, go ahead, Snail. I saw you just unmuted yourself. Are you going to say something?
I was gonna say people are listening to Creed. There's of course some like Zillennials out there listening to Disturbed in like a non-ironic way.
Oh, I know. Because I'm one of those people who listens to Creed, uh, non-ironically, as I'm sure I've made well aware on this podcast before. But Robbie has the flu. He's battling the flu. I think for this episode of the podcast, we will call him Mr. Poopy Pants. And because I think Snail, before we started recording, you took credit for that name, Mr. Poopy Pants,
I
and
did because I'm
that
putting it out there. There's no way Robbie doesn't have diarrhea right now.
exactly. So I don't know if he listens to these episodes, but if he does, he will be warmly remembered and fondly missed because he is battling his inner demons right now.
This will be
Uh,
talked about in years on the podcast. Like the remember when Robbie had diarrhea?
and you know the thing is, he's not here to defend himself, which makes it all the more better because we could just call him Poopy Pants all we want.
It'd be hilarious if he had not one single spell of diarrhea while he's battling this illness, and he's just like, "That's just so not fair. I've been suffering, and now people think I had diarrhea when I didn't." But
Exactly.
trust
Like
me, he did.
we are potentially besmirching his great name, but it's all in the name of downloads. At the end of the day, that's what this business is about. With that said, we still have questions for to answer from all of our lovely patrons who submitted questions over on Twitter. And since Robbie is not here to usually take question number one, he has provided responses in advance. So question number one comes from Brian. Brian's question was, do you think any suspensions will come about from the Dylan Larkin situation? All I know is I hope Larkin is doing okay, especially with all he's been dealing with personally. Brian says he has my prayers. Larkin was recently cross-checked very, very high up in the neck/face area, and Robbie said to Brian's question, so far it looks like the only suspension that has come out of the whole ordeal has been to former Pittsburgh Penguin David Perron, who was suspended 6 games for the retaliatory cross-check on a player who really wasn't even involved in the original incident, that being Dylan Larkin. If we haven't heard anything about supplemental discipline by this point, I doubt we will see anything else. While the result of the play was ugly, I can't say the cross check on Larkin was predatory. Interesting. It was more the collision with the other player that caused the injury from what it looks like. Hopefully, Larkin makes a quick recovery and can get back on the ice ASAP. So that was question number one from Brian. As we move over to Snail now, question number two. Question two comes from Tony Gale. Tony watched Valiant over the weekend, the Golden Knights docu-film. If you've not seen it, which I have not, it is very moving and worth the watch. It's on Amazon Prime. Based on that, why did the Penguins, Snail, not protect Fleury during the expansion draft?
Because Murray was supposed to be the guy. He was supposed to be that stud in net, that number one. It was an embarrassment of riches at times to have Fleury and Murray, and they won 2 cups with those guys, sharing a net. So yeah, it was plain and simple. It was because Murray was supposed to be the guy, and then unfortunately, it was when it all is said and done, I don't know if necessarily it was the move to protect. This could be debated, I think, widely, but with what you were given in that moment that year, you weren't the year prior. Let's go back the year prior. You weren't going to trade Fleury at the deadline.
No.
You were going to make that run with both of those goalies. Both, I think, at the time could have easily been number one goalies, like without a question. And then the next year, yeah, I think they needed cap space. I think the Penguins, obviously they wanted to remain competitive, but they knew they had 2 number 1 goalies, and I think that it was determined in the maybe even in the prior year that Fleury was gonna waive his no move or whatever to be exposed in the expansion draft. And Fleury was the older one. Murray was he had won 2 cups it was like he wasn't even a rookie. I think considered in the first year. I don't believe. What is Garrett? Is that right? Was he considered a rookie in 2016-17?
Yes. Uh-huh. He was. Yep.
So with a resume like that, just coming out of the gates, I think it was the organization was going to bet on that's your guy for the next decade. But as we kind of learned, Murray, with injury, he became quite fragile. I think he became a little bit. I think he was really having a hard time navigating being the guy without that safety net in a guy like Fleury behind him. And then they eventually moved on from him, and you've seen he's not even. I mean, he's on is it even LTIR? He's just. I don't think he's not playing right now. He's injured, and the injury's keeping him out this entire season. We'll see if he ever even gets back to the NHL. So, kind of a sore spot as a Penguins fan looking back on how that all played out, because you see Fleury. That was the year that the Penguins got knocked out in the second round of the playoffs by the Capitals, and the Capitals go on to play Vegas in the Stanley Cup final. Fleury starting in net had a hell of a run in the postseason, and they eventually lose to the Capitals. And yeah, that was a horrible year, I think, in Penguins history. Thinking back, I think of a lot of other things that went wrong that year, with like the Reeves for Brassard trade and Tom Wilson single-handedly pummeling the Penguins with his anger and brute force. So anyways, that's why they didn't keep Murray. Short and simple. Garrett, do you want to add anything onto that? Did you have any other insights maybe that I missed?
No, I think you hit everything. I like how you described it as an embarrassment of riches, and that's exactly what it was. Murray was the younger, cheaper option who somehow won championships in his first two seasons, still classified as a rookie. So, I mean, from a financial standpoint, it was basically already determined. And like you mentioned earlier, there were rumors and rumblings that Fleury was going to waive his his no movement clause or whatever it was, and that's exactly what happened. Again, hindsight is always 2020. Murray is no longer with the team, obviously. As Snail mentioned, he's battling injury, and Fleury is rumored to be in perhaps his final year. This could be his swan song, his farewell tour in the final year of his deal with the Minnesota Wild. So we'll keep an eye on that. But I mean, yeah, from a business perspective, you probably continue and make the same move 100 times out of 100.
No, no doubt.
Exactly. So it was just, the Penguins were in a situation to move on after the championships, and that's what they did.
Yeah, and like I said, always a sore spot, a soft spot, because with this core being intact in the year 2023, there's a part of me that wishes that, Fleury was a first overall pick. He was the first piece in the Crosby era. Like, people, I think, kind of skip over that sometimes, and it would be really awesome to see Fleury not really playing like his best. I mean, he's aging, he's old. Like, he's not playing like the Fleury of old, and it would still be cool to see him here, but there would have had to have been some. I mean, it wasn't possible. So that but in short, it was the right option. And like Garrett said, you do that, 100 times out of 100. So let's move on here from that, and we'll go to question 3 from our pal Brian. And Brian asks, which would you rather have, the best food question. Which would you rather have, the best mac and cheese of your life or the best milkshake of your life? Snail could use his gross licorice ice cream in his milkshake if he so chooses.
That's good. That's some good stuff. I love mac and cheese and I love milkshakes. I love milkshakes so much that basically every time I go see my brother-in-law, and sister, we're ordering milkshakes from like Dairy Queen or McDonald's or Sheetz as like a little nighttime snack treat kind of thing. But this is interesting. Best mac and cheese of your life or best milkshake? Um, I
Before
think
before you answer, Garrett, I kind of want to I want to lead the witness here a bit. I got a couple of questions I want to ask you regarding this. So when it comes to mac and cheese, like, what's your go-to, like, what is like your standard for mac and cheese if you're at home making it?
the thing that I'm most used to is just the Kraft Blue Box mac and cheese, and I grew up on
Elbows or
that.
shapes?
Uh, so shapes are in my household. They were the premium. I don't think they cost. I don't know if they cost anymore from the elbow, but it was a rather rare occurrence to get like the SpongeBob mac and cheese back in the day when I was
Oh,
growing up. And look, it just hit different. The SpongeBob mac and cheese, you can tell me it was the same, pasta just shaped differently, the same cheese sauce, whatever. It just hit differently. And so I grew up on the Kraft Blue Box. My sister makes homemade mac and cheese from time to time, which is really, really, really good.
like a
But
baked mac, like a
yeah, yep,
like you throw it in the oven.
yep. I know. So, so the standard is the Kraft Blue Box. But to give my answer, I'd probably go with the mac and cheese. I think the mac and cheese is more filling, and like milkshakes are great. Don't get me wrong, but I think I can only do a milkshake once every couple of days before I have to reset the batteries, if you know what I mean.
Dude, that's just such a tremendous amount of dairy in a
It
milkshake.
is.
Like if you think about it, like I mean, even if you're having like if it's a vegan milkshake or whatever, that's still just like you're putting like milk in like a frozen like I don't know. That's a lot of dairy, a lot of sugar too. Like that's a gut bomb every time, whether you're a kid or you're like I mean, you're Robbie right now every single time at this age.
Yeah, it's so far I've been able to luck out in terms of like gut bombs or stomach issues, but yeah, you're right. Between the amount of sugar like in a regular McDonald's vanilla milkshake, between the sugar and the dairy, it is a lot. And like that's why I can't have it every day. Mac and cheese I could probably do every day, once a day for a meal, because I don't think it's as heavy mac and cheese. At least a basic mac and cheese. It's basically two or three ingredients and that's it. Whereas, the milkshake, it can be ice cream or chocolate or whatever, and it could be a lot of other different components that make up that milkshake, especially if you're getting, higher priced, more extravagant milkshakes with chocolate drizzle and all sorts of the crazy stuff you can put in milkshakes.
Have you ever had a Jake Shake that they promote at the Penguins games?
Um, so that comes from the Milkshake Factory. I
Oh,
don't. You know what? Yes, as you bring that up, I had my first Jake Shake ever about a month and a half ago. My sister was in the south side of Pittsburgh, and I think there's a milkshake factory in the south side. And she was bringing us home milkshakes, and I was looking on their menu, and I was like, I don't know what I want. I want something, but I don't know what I want. And I ended up just getting a Jake Shake. It was actually very, very, very good, and I recommend it.
awesome. I always hear his little commercials when I listen to the game on the radio,
Yeah.
or through the NHL app or whatever, the radio station, and I'll hear his like little voice always advertising like free Jake Shake when I score, or like a half off shake when I score. And it's like,
Yep.
that's kind of awesome.
Yeah. It's really good, really good. What about you? What would you go, mac and cheese or milkshake?
Dude, I don't like milkshakes that much. Like I think that if I'm going for ice cream, I've made it like super apparent on here that I will just dummy a pint of ice cream in a sitting, and I don't need to add extra fluids to that and have it out of a straw to enjoy it. I love mac and cheese, dude. Like I make my own mac and cheese. I buy boxed mac and cheese. Have you ever seen the Vice? Do you ever watch like Vice YouTube videos?
Yeah, yeah.
Have you ever seen the one about the guy who has like a food aversion and he only eats mac and cheese?
I have not seen that. That is interesting.
Oh my god, Brian, Garrett, Robbie, once you get off the toilet, you should go and watch this YouTube video. It is awesome. This guy, he's got to be like 26, maybe 27, and he lives at his grandparents' house, and he seems like a genuinely just like an awesome nice kid, but he's just got he can't eat. He looks at other food and he gets like he gags, I guess, or like he gets like a watering of the mouth type deal, and he can just have like Velveeta boxed mac and cheese, and he loves it. Like to this day, he like is embarrassed when he goes out to eat and stuff because he's like, I can only have mac and cheese, but like that's all he eats like for years and years and years. And it's an interesting video, but like I feel like I could be that guy. Like I could eat boxed mac and cheese. Unfortunately, I like other foods, but like yeah, I'll take mid mac and cheese, not over a milkshake, yet alone the best mac and cheese of my life.
Yeah, I'd probably agree with you. I'd probably maintain that similar stance.
Yeah, homemade mac and cheese is great. Like when he says the best, I'm like, yeah, I could. I've had some great mac and cheeses before, but like, dude, sometimes like after a long day of work and it's like a cold evening out, just like a whole pot of like boxed mac and cheese to yourself sometimes is just like it's like therapy. It like kind of evens you out a bit. It's good for you.
Hey, I have something for you and something for the listeners who are unfortunately cursed with what I'm about to say. What are your thoughts on the slurping sound that a spoon makes when you're
Oh,
mixing the mac and cheese together?
the ASMR associated with eating mac and cheese, dude, come on. Like it's a warming sound. I know my if I was blind, my brain would give me serotonin because I know what's happening.
It it is a one of a kind of sound effect that you know where it's coming from when you hear that
Oh
mushy
yeah.
slurp, kind of thing.
When it's coming, I don't know about you, but especially when it's coming from like an oversized spoon, maybe like a
Oh
wooden
yes,
spoon, it
yes, yes,
just is like, yeah, it has an acoustics to it that is just
yes.
like chef's kiss.
So, did you want to take Robbie's question four?
Yeah,
Or do you want?
sure.
All right.
I'll take the so question 4 here comes from Brian, and Brian asks Robbie, who is currently on the toilet, who needs new draws. Brian asks, "Who is on your Mount Rushmore of coaches?" And Robbie says, "Guessing this is 4 coaches, regardless of team, based on how the questions asked." He lists here Scotty Bowman's an easy call. Al Arbor won 4 straight cups with the Islanders, so he gets a nod in Robbie's book. Impossible to overlook the great Canadians teams led by Toe Blake, who won 8 cups in 15 years, including 5 in a row, which is just crazy to read out loud. And then he adds the fourth here is Herb Brooks because he's a red-blooded American.
USA, USA,
We
USA.
were just talking about patriotism before we got on here, and I think that's awesome. Robbie is a red-blooded American to the core. I love when he wears that one sweatshirt. It's like you'll know what I'm talking about, Garrett. It's the one that's like it looks like a sports sweatshirt, but it's actually just like a battlefield.
Gettysburg. It's a Gettysburg sweatshirt.
Yeah, he wears like a Getty's Battle of Gettysburg sweatshirt with like the year it took place on it, which is just so awesome. So yeah, there it is. He's got Scotty Bowman, Al Arbor, Toe Blake, and Herb Brooks as his Mount Rushmore. I thought Mount Rushmore had 5.
I think it is four.
Okay, shows
Let you
shows
know
how
what?
much of a red-blooded American I am.
Let me, since we're at both of our computers here, let me Google it in real time. It is one, two, three. Yeah, it's four.
It's
It's
4. Okay.
okay.
Yeah, I mean those are all those I'll admit that like a Toe Blake probably wouldn't be on mine. I think if I wasn't having like him or yeah, Alb Arbor's a good case. I would probably throw in a guy like I don't know, dude, is Mike Sullivan close on that list or like what about the guy who was in Chicago? Who am I thinking of? The guy who won the cups with the
Quinville.
Quenville. Seems like a the modern day dynasty. John Cooper's kept his job for a long time and been to 4 Stanley Cups while he's coaching. Um, but yeah, no arguments here necessarily with Robbie's list. What about you, Garrett?
No, I don't have any arguments with it. You mentioned Mike Sullivan. In terms of American NHL head coaches, he is probably on the short list for me in terms of greatest all time American head coaches. I don't know the nationalities of a lot of these coaches. I'm assuming the majority of them are Canadian, like Quenville and John Cooper. I don't know their nationalities off the top of my head. I just know Sullivan is from Massachusetts. So that's why I said, in terms of American head coaches, you could probably make a case. I don't know how successful of a case it would be for Sullivan being maybe one of the best coaches of all time, maybe on a Mount Rushmore of just all time coaches. But for me, I'll just take it down a step and say American head coaches. Yeah, Sullivan is definitely on that short list.
Yeah, I guess that's a good point, American. I agree. Let's see your question. I'll read it for you here, Garrett. Question number 5 coming from Brian yet again. And Brian says that the Metro is arguably the most competitive in the league, but do you feel really lucky that most of the Metro teams aren't succeeding the way everyone thought they would? Just need to fix a few things, and he highlights here the power play mostly, and we are right there in the hunt.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking at the Metropolitan Division standings right now. The Rangers are 6-4 in their last 10. They're I don't want to say they're pulling away with the division. They have 39 points right now, 19-7-1. But you look at the between the Islanders in second place and the Penguins in second to last place. The Islanders have 35 points, the Flyers have 33, the Capitals have 31, the Devils and Hurricanes have 31 points, and the Penguins have 29 points. So it's not a stretch to say that the Penguins can get back and right the ship and start competing. I don't think they're going to be winning the Metropolitan Division, but they can absolutely, like Brian says. I mean, we've seen the last two nights against the Coyotes and the Canadians. I don't know what's happened on the power play, but they're converting, and it looks like they're converting in bunches. I don't know what has exactly happened that's made it different from the prior 30 something attempts where they went 0 for 37 or 0 for 39 or something like that. But they can finally, get that monkey off their back and say that they finally have a couple of power play goals. So yeah, everyone's sort of log jammed together. No one besides the Rangers are really separating themselves from the pack.
I love how like the Edmonton Oilers absolutely soiled themselves in the first part of the season, but they were so favorited, and Connor McDavid is the golden child of Canada right now, that for weeks they were at the bottom of the league, and everyone's like, yeah, no, you never know. They could still get back in it. They were never counted out. But then you hear people about the Penguins who, like you had kind of mentioned, I would sum it up to the Rangers and the top teams and the Penguins. I mean, the good teams being a bad slump week away from being where the Penguins are at, and the Penguins being a heater week away from being where they're kind of at. I mean, that, it takes two to tango for that to happen, but they're like, the Penguins, are they going to be selling at the deadline? They're in trouble, man. Like, and I agree, they were in trouble. The 30-0 whatever power play was concerning, but like, it's just funny because realistically, with the way the Metro is, like Brian said, it's like pretty competitive. I think the standings shift quite often. But yeah, they're a good week, and a team having a bad week away from being up in the mix, just like pretty quickly here.
The Oilers are back in the thick of things, and I was just looking, they've won 8 straight games. They're on an 8-game win streak.
That's crazy. I mean, that team, they were they had, talk about expectations coming into the season.
Yeah, exactly.
Crazy, but yeah. Anyways, I was. It's just funny how sometimes the narratives can be switched.
Within a couple of weeks of good performance. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Alrighty. Question 6, another food related question. This one is drink related. This one, question 6, comes from Brian. What is your favorite holiday drink?
So holiday drinks, I immediately think of like eggnog, which I think one time when I was a kid, I had too much eggnog, of course non-alcoholic, and I was Robbie Noggle for like 3 days. I was on the John, probably I like had dairy poisoning or something. I don't know what it was. I do not like eggnog, and that is the kind of the only drink I really associate with the holidays. I think some people like to drink, like I think there's like holiday beers now, like you know beer companies are marketing these like dark, kind of like nuttier tasting, thick high percentage beers as like a holiday drink, and I can't drink those things. I like my beer like light and pale in color. Um I like cheaper beer. So the drink that I associate more so now with the holidays than any drink is simply on Christmas morning with my coffee. I drink coffee every single day. I like to just put maybe like a shot, depending on how the night before went. I like to drop a shot of brown liquor, some Canadian whiskey in my coffee in the morning, and just really get the day started like that. That's been a tradition for the last few years. So uh, yeah, I've seen some things, especially on like the internet now, or like on Instagram or TikTok. People are coming up with all sorts of crazy drinks. Like they're using, I think Bailey's and Kahlua type of drinks mixed with some sort of like or like there's peppermint schnapps. There's all sorts of things like that that you can concoct, or maybe have on their own. And I'm not a guy that's really too much into the liqueur. I'll have kind of, as they say, like a foofy drink from maybe if like someone makes them for me. I don't really know how to make them. I'm a simple guy. I'll drop a stern shot of liquor in my coffee, whiskey to be exact. Garrett, what about you? I'm curious, what is your favorite holiday drink? I guess they can be non-alcoholic too. I just immediately think alcoholic. But Garrett, what are you drinking around the holidays?
I'm not like I don't do eggnog. I like I like eggs. I don't, but like the dairy again. And I love milkshakes, but eggnog for me, I will not touch it, alcoholic or non-alcoholic. Um, Maybe once or twice during the holidays, I'll do a nice hot mug of hot chocolate, and typically I'll do it in like December and lead up to Christmas. Maybe, in that stretch between Christmas and New Year's, I'll do it again. But for me, I'm a pretty simple person. Yeah, like when I saw this, I wasn't thinking really alcoholic much of anything. I mean, the first thing that came to mind was eggnog, but again, I don't touch it. So I'll just say hot chocolate.
Hot chocolate's great too. Times I think I don't drink as much hot chocolate as I did when I was a kid, but yeah, when the hot chocolate comes out for sure, it's got to be cold out and maybe cozied up watching a movie with some hot chocolate and a couple marshmallows in the top. Can't really beat that. All right, I think moving on here to is this your question?
Question.
Seven.
This is Robbie's question.
This is
He
Robbie's question. I'll read it and you can read Robbie's answer.
Okay.
Kim Larson, our pal from across the pond there. Have any of you seen the new episodes of Frasier?
This is funny that I thought I was going to give this to you, Snail, since we were talking about Frasier on a
Oh,
couple.
you guys are the
episodes.
Frasier fans.
Well, yeah, that's true. So Kim wants to know if we have seen or if Robbie has seen the revival of Frasier. He says I have not. He's heard mixed reviews, which I have heard the same. Might be a holiday break watch if I'm feeling up to it. Yeah, I heard the same thing. I don't have the streaming service it's on, Paramount Plus. But I heard the writing is pretty solid, pretty comparable to what Frasier was at its peak back in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, like, if I'm bored and I'm looking for something to watch, maybe I'll, research it. Maybe I'll dip my toe into Paramount Plus, but I have not seen the Frasier revival. Question number 9 is from Kim Larson as well. Snail, if you as a Penguin fan go to a Penguin game in oh no, I'm sorry, we've not question 9, question 8. Question 8 also comes from Kim Larson. Snail, if you could have a new Penguins jersey from the collection of jerseys that they wear this season, which jersey are you taking and which player are you putting on the back of your jersey?
I was thinking about this last night because I was asked kind of recently about a Christmas list, and I haven't really chalked much up. Um, I think it's due. I'm due for maybe a new jersey. I tried on recently out of storage. I grabbed some of my older like my. I have like a little bag of 3 Penguins jerseys, and I pulled them out and I put them on, and it's safe to say that I've grown a bit, both maybe a little bit in height and a little bit in girth since I last purchased a jersey. And jerseys, you don't want them fitting too tight. You kind of want to be able to slip maybe like a hoodie under them and wear it as sort of a shell if you were going to wear one out or wear it to a game or whatever. So I was thinking about this question a little bit, and I think I'd probably go for my favorite of the Penguins jerseys is, and I think they have them this year in a different color than they did last year, but it's the Penguins with the wait, it maybe you'll have to help me out on this. Do they have the white lettering that goes diagonal across the chest this year as an alternate?
I don't know if it's this year. I know that they've worn those in the past, but I don't know if it's like if that's their special jersey this year.
Okay. I swear I saw let me just quickly look up here because I've historically since they brought him back a couple of years ago been a huge fan of that diagonal lettering. I like to kind of call it like the Rangers lettering because it kind of looks like the New York Rangers jersey or whatever, but I like that in dark. Okay, so this year it looks like yeah, their third jersey this year is the diagonal lettering. So I thought I had that right. I'd get one of those, and I was really thinking about a player that I'd put on the back of it. I wouldn't mind going blank, but I got in my collection. I have my first one was Sid, obviously, and then it was Gino, and then I like to. I think I was the first person to have a Kessel jersey, and I'll tell you why quickly because I remember this is way back. 2015-16. It was the off season, and on my phone, I paint houses. I was getting up early to go work with my dad, and I checked my phone, and I got a notification right when I was waking up, and it was the news of Kessel being traded to the Penguins. Yeah, the Kapanen deal or whatever, the whatever ended up being the full package. I saw that, and I immediately, in bed with sleep in my eyes, I went to the NHLshop.com on my phone, and I wanted to order a Kessel jersey immediately, only to realize that they weren't making Kessel jerseys yet. So I ordered a custom jersey, and I just put 81 Kessel on it and clicked buy right then and there. And it took like 3 months to get my jersey, or took like 2 months or something crazy to get my jersey. But I would like to say that I was probably the first person in the nation with a Penguins Kessel jersey, or at least that put in an order for one. And so for this question, I will say I'm tempted to get. I would be tempted to get a Carlson jersey, just because if the Penguins are out of the playoffs and they trade him to a contender for some sort of ridiculous package, I really would like to have had like a Penguins jersey that said that Carlson was here for a cup of coffee. I'm also like, I'm a big fan of this Nedeljkovic kid who's come in. I just like, I don't know, he's just like kind of goofy looking, and he's like, I like the way he plays, and I don't know, the name Nedeljkovic. Like, I was thinking about getting like a Nedeljkovic jersey maybe too. So it'd probably be either Erik Karlsson or our second string goalie Nedeljkovic. What about you, Garrett? Just for the hell of it, if you were asked this question, what are you laying down for our guys here?
I'm not buying a jersey because right now, as things stand, I don't have New Jersey kind of money. But what I did buy a Carlson player T-shirt in gold, which I really, really like.
Nice. That's the
Uh,
move.
I like to say, you like to say you were the first person to get that Kessel 81 Pittsburgh jersey. I had to have been one of the first people who went on the Penguins online team store, and I was just scrolling through, because what I was looking for? I was looking for a new hat, and I ended up buying that Penguins hat that you've seen me wear on here from
Yeah.
time to time. And I was looking at, I'm scrolling, I'm thinking this was after they had traded for Carlson in the summer, and I was like, I wonder if they have anything. And lo and behold, they had this gold player shirt with Carlson on the back. You know what? I was like, yeah, I have to buy that in a heartbeat. And so I did. So that I will classify that as my answer. I got the Carlson T-shirt with the name and number on it.
Solid choice. Yeah, I like, the older you get, it's more like I'll just get a T-shirt with
Exactly.
the fake jersey or whatever. Or maybe when you're a little bit younger, it's kind of dope to rock a jersey or whatever. But yeah, no, a solid choice. I think Erik Karlsson is the shiny new toy, obviously in Pittsburgh. He's another one of those like legacy players that come here to try to win. That's kind of happened, every so often in Penguins history. So and I'd like to think that he'd be here for the long run, but if he's not, it's like I never got an Iginla jersey when he was in Pittsburgh, but I have his trading card from when he was here, and I had a T-shirt jersey or whatever of his, and I'd probably roll Carlson. Safe to say he's probably the popular choice here on the podcast. I don't know what Robbie would say to that, but you'd probably guess it's something the same. All right, Garrett, you ready for let's see, question 9 here, I believe, coming from Kim. And Kim Larson states here, if you as a Penguin fan go to a Penguins game in Philadelphia, is that safe? Or should you prepare yourself for some hostility? And the same question for Philadelphia fans when they visit Pittsburgh.
I love this question so much. So basically, any team that you root for, you're probably going to say something along the lines of, we have the best fans in the league. We have the best fans in the sport. Our fans are so nice and cordial, and they don't bother anybody. Whereas you go to Philadelphia, Philadelphians are known for throwing batteries at Santa Claus during an NFL game for the Eagles many, many, many moons ago. They actually threw batteries, like AA batteries, at Santa Claus. That gives you just a slight glimpse into the life of a Philadelphia sports fan. But if you go to Philly, if you go to the Wells Fargo Center and you go to a Pittsburgh Penguins Philadelphia Flyers game, I'm not saying wear the bulletproof vest, but I am saying just prepare yourself. If you're going into that place wearing any sort of Penguins gear, I have not been to Philadelphia. I don't plan on going to Philadelphia. From the stories I've heard from the people that I've talked to, just prepare yourself, and if you have to put your keys in your hand and make that knuckle, if you're fighting off an intruder or something. I'm just saying, what I've heard, folks. Don't shoot the messenger. But like I said, don't wear the bulletproof vest to Philadelphia, but just know what you're signing up for if you're going into Philadelphia enemy territory wearing the black and gold.
From what I've heard, that people from Philly are just like extremely like direct, like especially compared to like I have a buddy who's from Philadelphia, my buddy Matt, and like he's a really nice guy, but there is such a difference between someone raised on like the West Coast, especially somewhere like Seattle, and him, where he's not trying to be a dick, but he's just extremely direct. And like I think that people from over here aren't super used to that. So I'd say if you're probably going to Philly, if you're walking in there wearing a Sidney Crosby jersey, in your Sunday's best Sidney Crosby jersey, like Philly fans are probably just more than anything, yeah, they might throw batteries at you, but they also might just tell you exactly how they feel seeing you strolling about in there. And I would take that over getting a battery chucked at me. But yeah, Philly fans have certainly a reputation, wouldn't you say, Garrett?
Yes, a reputation built on decades and decades of. I mean, really, they were the Broad Street Bullies back in the '70s. They built that reputation on being hard to play against, tough, gritty. I mean, hell, their mascot is named Gritty. I don't know if there's any correlation there, but you know, I mean, this is not a conversation. I don't want to branch off and have a conversation about mascots, but Gritty is just an abomination to the eyes. It is just a freak show in an orange hairy suit. It is not good. Not good. Not good at all.
Is Gritty like, doesn't he like kind of like spark like this primal urge of like wanting to like hit and like punch?
Yeah, you're taught from a young age to not hit and not punch and not throw things. But and I'm going through that right now with my two young nephews who are where we keep telling them to it's good to be kind. We don't throw, we don't hit, we share. But when it comes to Gritty, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's more than okay to throw some batteries at Gritty.
Yeah, he kind of provokes those feelings. Yeah, God, dude, mascots. We could talk about the Seattle mascot for like an hour. When they unveiled Bowie, I was like, Jesus Murphy. But we'll not. Maybe that's a question for another mailbag. But let's move on here to one of Robbie's questions, I believe, and I'll take this one. I believe this is
Yep.
10 from Kim Larson. He asks, could Tony DeAngelo be a player the Penguins should move for? Could he strengthen our defense and then ship Graves out? And for that, Robbie has an opinion, and his opinion states, certainly hope not. For one, DeAngelo is an offensive defenseman with little defensive impact, and I don't think Dubas is ready to give up on Graves after half of a season. There is also a reason DeAngelo seems to find himself on a new team every season. To learn more about that, head over to Google. Robbie says Google it yourself.
Very direct. Very direct.
There's that Philly coming out, that East Coast and Robbie. But yeah, I don't know. Dude, when you got Letang and you got Carlson,
The last thing they need is Tony DeAngelo.
Yes.
Because, like you said, I mean, your argument is for the on ice production. They already have Letang and Carlson, two right hand shot defensemen. And you haven't even factored in some of the off ice. How do I want to put this correctly? Off ice
Mishaps.
Mishaps is a good word for that. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. Like Robbie says, go to Google if you want to research that. I don't want that kind of player in my locker room. If I'm a general manager, that's just personal belief of mine. But from a on ice perspective, what kind of skill he brings to the team, they just don't need that.
Plain and simple, you got two of the best doing what they do, and DeAngelo wishes he was a Letang or a Carlson, and you don't need that kind of defenseman, essentially, is what Robbie's saying right now. If you were to bolster your defense, I think Robbie would want an upgrade on a guy like Graves, who plays, like in Pittsburgh's terms, more of a better Brian Dumoulin role, someone who stops scoring from happening, not necessarily someone who provides an offensive touch on the back end. And I think we both here agree with what Robbie says.
So with that, we will move on to question 11. Question 11 comes from Kim Larson. Snail, you look around the NHL. What teams do you think could be next in line to fire their coach? And as we talk about this question, we should mention that the Blues recently severed ties with their Stanley Cup winning coach Craig Berube. So, you look around the league. Do you notice any other coaches that might be on the hot seat?
Well, depending on the night, I would say Mike Sullivan and Todd Reardon are probably on and off that list every so often, but I'm not really there right now. I know I sometimes tend to overreact, and I think with it's more of my heart, not my brain, when it comes to the Penguins, and sometimes I want a change because it gets frustrating, but it would suck to part with Sully. Like, I think that if you could fix the power play, there's less of an ISO cam on what Sullivan's putting out there. So with I'm gonna stay away from Sullivan and the Penguins. It's been noisy in Ottawa, and I think that's maybe why they haven't fired DJ Smith in Ottawa, is because with the changing of the guard as far as ownership and kind of the smaller changes they've made up there. I think the last thing that they want is noise surrounding yet another change, like in regards to management. So, but I would say that their record, I think he would be in line right now. I think if there wasn't the turmoil going on with the, the off-season stuff, again, you maybe use Google and see some of the things happening off the ice up there in Ottawa, and the manager, the ownership change. I think without all of that stuff, DJ Smith might be a guy who would have maybe lost his job already. They had expectations coming into the season, and they are kind of just pulling the same crap that they pull every season. It's typical Ottawa type stuff. They kind of, they're definitely not playoff contenders right now, and they were expected to be, one of those teams pushing teams like the Capitals and the Penguins out of a playoff position, but not the case this year. Berube, you mentioned that, Garrett. Berube being fired in St. Louis. Dude, since St. Louis won that cup, they're just not a team that I've paid much attention to, and I did not have Berube as a guy kind of losing his job, but I guess, out of sight, out of mind, and in that same vein, I wonder maybe if a guy in Seattle right now with a team that's underperforming, and David Hackstall, former Flyers head coach and assistant coach up in Toronto, he was coaching a team that I kind of expected in their inaugural season, and then they really kind of found they didn't kind of they totally found success last season, and then this year they've kind of regressed to the mean, and this is kind of the team that I thought that Seattle kind of has roster wise. And when you get to the second round of the playoffs like they did last season, and you got Matty Beniers winning the Calder Trophy, and you've got just a great kind of like a great energy to the team. The way that they played, they were pests. They were super hard to play against. They were truly an energy team, and they are not bringing that same energy this year. I've wondered at times if the team wants to get back into the postseason, what's going to have to change for them. Ron Francis, the general manager, is historically extremely patient and not someone that goes out and makes any sort of blockbuster trades. I think they've got a lot of good draft picks down in the in Coachella Valley right now. There's probably some players from within that they could promote and get maybe a little bit of a fresh look on both their blue line and up front. But I've been wondering if maybe Hackstall is one of those coaches that, if they wanted to make a change there and really make a push, if they have a guy, I don't know if it's former Penguins coach Dan Bylsma, who's coaching a team in the AHL where they went to the God, what's it called? Is it called the Calder Cup final? Is that what the AHL championship is?
Yes, I believe it's the Calder Cup.
The Calder Cup. So they were I think they went to Game 7 like overtime or something in the Calder Cup. The Coachella Valley did under Dan Bylsma last year. And I wonder if maybe there's a change from within happening where Hackstall gets the boot, and to get this team kind of like a la Pittsburgh the year that they brought in Sully. You fire the head coach, you bring in the AHL coach, and then with that he brings up some of his guys that he's been coaching and has playing a certain system with trust, a large amount of trust involved, going both ways from player to coach, and maybe that's the rejuvenation a team like Seattle could use. I didn't see Dean Evison getting fired in Minnesota. I thought Minnesota was just playing like they are in cap prison right now with the buyouts from Suter and Parise. I wonder, maybe going the opposite way. Is there a team that's going to fire a coach to get a guy like Dean just in and coaching their team? Because he really, you know, he was able to get a lot out of that team given their cap restraints and roster. So those are just kind of my thoughts on the coaching right now. No one else is really sticking out. I think some of the teams that really stink and are losing, they want it to remain that way. And teams that are sort of underperforming right now, it's still a little bit early in the season. I think a lot of GMs are maybe just either standing pat and remaining patient, and there could be moves to come that are unforeseen. But I'd maybe look to Seattle for a coaching change. Um, yeah, that's all I got. Garrett, you got any coaches you think deserve the hot seat right now?
No, I think you basically you nailed everything on the head that I would probably talk about. I think your points made about Seattle, I definitely agree with. They look more like the team that I thought they were going to be last season. I think there's some talent there, but all the pieces are not together. I'm surprised Hackstall was the first coach that they decided to go with in the first place instead of maybe someone younger, maybe like not on the beaten path, maybe someone out of the NCAA. But Hackstall, I could see maybe being on the hot seat just based on the success that they had last season. But you do mention Ron Francis, his general, ability to be patient and wait things out, see if his team turns the ship around. But yeah, outside of that, I don't know anybody off the top of my head that I would say, yeah, this guy's probably going to be fired within the next month.
Yeah, I can't really think. Maybe maybe that Granado up in Buffalo. I think that team was supposed to be a team that really makes a big jump. And to be totally honest, I don't have their standings pulled up in front of me, and I don't know. I don't think they're in a playoff spot. I think they've been underperforming a bit compared to expectations. And I've heard a little bit of just typical Twitter crap. You see things where I think Buffalo fans are getting a bit impatient. It's been a long time since they've been. Competitive, and I think with this coach Granado, he's kind of gotten the best out of these young stars that are forming up there in Buffalo. And with another year of they've had injuries and they've underperformed a bit. I guess in all fairness, he might be someone whose seat's getting a little bit hot, but I don't really know the total temperature of the room up there in Buffalo. So yeah, let's move on here from that. That was some good coach talk going on there, and I'll state here on the record that Sully is not on that list at the moment from us, although at times maybe we've leaned that way. Mike Reardon surely is on that list, I'd say. Let's see, question 12. I think this is the last question here, and this question goes to Garrett, I believe. Edward Beckham. Edward Beckham asks here, is it still worth me coming to Pittsburgh for the final 3 home games of the season? Plus, he's going to mix in a Pirates game. It's starting to look like the Penguins will have nothing to play for. Glass half empty from our pal Edward.
Edward, I don't know if you've ever been to Pittsburgh. If you haven't, I mean, I can't recommend it enough in terms of the touristy things to come and see and eat and do. But anytime you have a chance, I should say, to come to the Steel City, I will absolutely recommend it to anybody. You're getting a little taste of the winter sport, which is obviously the Penguins, and you'll get a tiny little appetizer of Pirates baseball as well. So I even if the Penguins are out of playoff contention, which there's still a lot of hockey to be played, they've had an up and down start to their season thus far, but they still very well could turn the ship around and be a playoff team come the middle of April. That seems like it's a lifetime away from now. And like I said, there's still a lot of hockey to be played. I would not pass up an opportunity if I didn't live here and these were the teams that I rooted for. I would make it a priority to come to Pittsburgh, take in some of the attractions, take in some of the great food that we have here that I am personally biased for. Yeah, absolutely. I cannot say come to Pittsburgh enough and enjoy it for yourself firsthand if you haven't. Snail, do you have anything else to add before we wrap up this episode?
No, just that Robbie has diarrhea, I think.
Yeah. So hopefully by Monday, Robbie's bowels are healed up and the flu is out of his system, and we can get back to a 3-man booth. But until then, for Snail, I have been Garrett Bahana. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of the Skating Penguin Network Mailbag, and we will talk to all of you again very soon.